Okay, we're going to use Inkscape to create our graphic designs of the 2x3 plate with our name on it for the wood engraving and cutting, and we're also going to use it to create the 2-inch acrylic circle with our name on it. So, first thing we got to do is open up Inkscape. So I go ahead and open it, and it's going to pop up. It's going to be defaulted into, I don't know what size this is, but it's also going to be millimeters. So we're going to go ahead and change it to default as inches. So we're going to go to File, Document Properties, and we're going to go ahead and select inches here. And we want the display to be inches as well. That will help us when we start uh, sizing our parts and moving them around the board. So depending on which machine you're using, if we're here at Success Academy, both machines, the Glowforge and the Epilogue Zing, are both 24 in width and 12 in height. So we're going to go ahead and set that up. And then our this is a complete mimic of the bed of our laser. So we're going to go ahead and pretend that all of this is from scratch and there's nothing here. So we're just going to go ahead and run through how to set up your graphic design for your laser cut. So just like a normal Word document when you go to print on a printer, wherever you put it on the bed, so wherever it's on here is where it's going to print. So if I take this and put it here, it's going to print half on the paper and half off. So I would like to put it as kind of a default. I like to leave it kind of in the upper left-hand corner. That's 0, 0. So this is right here is always home for our lasers. That's 0, 0. The top left is 0, 0. So that's where our home is for the laser. So everything else is going to be kind of based off that. So first thing we have to talk about is anything that is black is going to be engraved, or what's known as rastering in the lasering community. So we don't want this to be rastered. We only want our text to be rastered. So we have to go ahead and get rid of that. So we're going to go to Object, Fill and Stroke, and that's going to pop up this dialog box here where we have all of our properties. And we don't want any fill color, so it's going to go ahead and eliminate that. We do want a stroke because we're going to have to cut this out. So we're going to have a stroke on here that's going to be all black, which it is. I come down here and select black if I like. That's for fill. Let's take that off. Go back here. That's all black. We want it to be solid. We want the stroke to be 0.003. So it's 0.003 of an inch. I come off and I can see that, and the laser is going to recognize that really small line as what's called a vector, or it's going to basically know it's going to cut. So a raster is going to go back and forth, engraving the material, and a vector is going to go in a straight line, and we usually use that as our cutting method. So vectors are cutting, rasters are engraving. So right now we have our vector done. It's not to size, so we want to make sure it's to size. So our width of our particular material is going to be 2 by 3. So you can see that that is not in the correct orientation. So there's a couple ways I can fix that. I can rotate it and fix it. I can simply go back here and say, you know what, I actually do want it to be 3 here and 2 that way. And then I want it to also be at 0, 0. So there. I like to make sure that the material, I have a little lip on the material, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the arrow keys a couple of times just to bring it down so I have a little extra material that's not going to get caught in the laser. So that gives me a little bit of kind of a margin, if you will, in Word. So we have our vector. This is the shape it's going to cut. Now we have to add our font. So we're going to go ahead and go to Font. I'm going to just create a dialog box. I'm going to say Mr. Ebersol. Okay, now that's a little too small, so we're going to go ahead and make this just a touch bigger so we can get the whole thing. And Ebersol. Notice that that there's no fill in here, so right now this is a stroke only. So we're going to go ahead and go to fill. I want to fill it completely, and I don't want any stroke, because if there's a stroke, the way that we have the stroke is it's actually going to cut it out. We want the layers to stay there, so we're going to go ahead and just have them filled, which is a raster, so I'll actually engrave that with no stroke, so I won't do any cutting. I'm going to come over here, and now the other problem is it's not centered on our material, so I'm going to select everything. I'm going to go to Object. All the way down, we're going to go to Align and Distribute. This pops up, so this is our fill and stroke. Here is our line. We just added them to our properties box. We're going to go ahead and go to relative to each other. So you can see how I've selected area. We're going to click this one, which centers it left and right, and then this one centers it up and down. So now they're perfectly centered on our piece. If we didn't want that, we could move it around anywhere we want. As of right now, if I did that, the O and the L will be, they would be engraved on the material, but then the vector would cut it out, so you would only ever see Mr. Evers, which would be weird. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that, bink, bink, and we're done. So if I wanted to change the font, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go to text. So I selected that, I selected my text and font. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger out here. And you can go ahead and choose, it'll also preview what type of fonts we have available to us. So you can see down here in the dialog box, or that's the preview window, sorry, that it will actually preview what it's going to look like. And when I'm happy, I can hit apply, I can go back. Okay, so like that. If I don't like that, I hit Control Z, and it goes back to what I had before. So you can play with that. You can also change the font size here, just like you would anything else. Apply. Notice that's too big. I would have to go back into here, and then just make the whole thing just big enough that holds it. Then I can go back in and say, you know what, that's not centered. I'm going to go ahead and center it, but now I'm off the material, so that's a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control. Control will allow, oops, not that. I just want to select the text. And if I don't hit Control, I can move this in any big way. If I do hold Control while I'm doing this, it will keep its aspect ratio. So it's going to keep its scaling. So it's not going to change and deform itself. So I'm just changing the size relative to itself. And then here, and I'll line it again. Okay, I'm happy with that. That looks great. I'm going to go back here in my X direction, just like in algebra. Go back to 0, and I'm just going to pop it off the edge just a little bit. Okay, the last thing we got to do is make our circle. So here, there's our circle. We're going to go ahead and make this, nope, don't do that. We're going to go ahead and make this circle just like we did before. We want this to be 2 by 2 per the instructions. Nope, that's the wrong one. That's position. Width to be 2 and height to be 2. And then I'm just going to kind of move this over to about here. Notice that it's going to engrave that whole thing, but I only want my text. So I'm just going to go ahead and say I don't want any fill. I don't want any fill, but I do want a stroke. And I want that stroke to be 0.3. Okay, so there. And then we'll hit that. And then we'll, for fun, I'm going to go ahead and bring in let's bring in some clip art. So let's look. You always, when you're bringing in logos and things, you always want to make sure that you're dealing with black and white. When you deal with other colors, the program starts to see them in a gradient version of black and white, black being the darkest laser engraved, and white being no laser engraved, and then anything in between will give you a gradient or a sliding scale of that. So I like dealing with just clip art. So we're going to clip art. I don't know. Let's look for logos. Clip art. You know what? How about flowers? Oh, this is a good one. Yeah, whatever this is. That looks great. So I'm going to take that. Let's use a nice little run. Boom. Ooh. Yeah, Falcon looks nice. I'm just going to copy it. I'm just going to bring it right in. Boom. Okay. Oh, that's going to be a problem with the background. So let's try without a background. Do. Let's do. There, that's a good one. Copy. Pink. And again, I want to hold Control. Bring this down so it holds its aspect ratio. Do a little bit more. That's actually going to engrave it for me. There. Again, that's not quite centered. Boom. So I'm going to go ahead and line it. Okay. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to go ahead and save it. File, save as. And let's call it, you're going to save it to a USB drive, and I'm just going to save it to my desktop for now. And you would walk it over to the laptop connected to the machine, but for now I'm just going to use my downloads folder as my USB drive with air quotes on it. So we're going to call it session B, I don't know, parts 1. Okay, now I'm going to go to Glowforge, and we'll just go ahead and pop it into Glowforge for us. So I'm going to go to apps.glowforge.com. have to be connected to the Wi-Fi. I'm going to go to create new design from blank, and I'm going to upload this. Boom. And that was the one I just saved. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I forgot. It doesn't like the text because it doesn't have the font that I used from Inkscape in Glowforge. So there's one extra step I have to do if I want my exact font to come in. I'm going to go to Object. I'm sorry, I lied. I'm going to go to Path. I'm going to go to Object to Path, and it's going to go ahead and make this now an object. It is no longer text; it's an actual object. So now when I save it, save. I'm going to go back to Glowforge. Pink. Nope, that's the wrong Glowforge. And I'm stuck now. Come on, computer. You can do it. You can do it. There you go. All right. Let's delete that. I'm going to bring this back in. I saved over it, so same file, but now I use that object to path. So it should have brought in the letters as an object instead of just text. So it's not actually looking for font anymore because it already has the file and its outlines. Just takes a second. Boop, boop, boop. Boom. There it goes. And it already knows which ones to cut and which ones to engrave because when we set the lines as 0.003 or 3,000ths of an inch, it recognizes it as a vector. So I would set this up wherever I want. If I wanted to only print this, just print that one, I could delete it. Control Z would bring it back. Or I can ungroup. And now I think, nope, I can't. So it says everything. So I'll have to print them off one at a time. So I would just delete this, go to print, make sure I select my materials. If I want to do acrylic, that would be acrylic. You would give me the settings already for it. I'm going to go ahead and cut this one out of wood. And wherever I put it on the board, again, is where it's going to cut. So if I put a board in the machine, you would see it. There's a little camera in there. You're actually looking at the honeycomb of the bed. So wherever I put this on, just like a Word document, wherever I put it is where it's going to put on the paper. Instead of paper, we're using wood or acrylic or cardboard. Instead of ink, we're using a laser. So that's pretty cool. So again, if I want to bring it back, because I deleted it, I would just Control Z it and bring it back. Bop, bop. I would hit print. I've already selected my material. It auto-generated the settings for me. There's only two settings you really have to be aware of. There are power settings, and power settings down here, and speed settings. The faster you go, the less time the laser is on the material, so the lighter it's going to be cutting. The more power you give it, the more power it's going to be used to cutting. So there's always a fine line of too much power and too little speed, or not enough speed, too much power. So you have to dial those in. Luckily, there's a lot of people out there that have already dialed those in, so we can just use their settings, and you can always go in and really fine tune those. So this one would be good. All I got to do is walk over to my machine and hit the flashing blue button for magic time. If I was taking this over to the Zing, I'm going to hit Control P, because now instead of saving it and uploading it, now I'm going to print directly from my Inkscape. So I'm going to use the Epilogue engraver. You would save it to a flash drive, walk it over to the computer. You would do it from there, engrave, program, and just like the Glowforge, it also recognizes what you're engraving and what you're vectoring. You're going to go ahead and set up, we're doing wood, so 400 dpi, that's just the resolution. That should be enough for what we're doing. And then we're also cutting 1/8 inch material. Here you have to look at either the 1/8 inch or the 1/4 inch, or these here in the Success Gaming can't cut much more than that. But the ones at the high school could probably cut 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4. So just be aware of what you're cutting. If you're cutting acrylic, I believe the 2-inch circle should be acrylic, so you would use that. Just make sure you understand what you're doing. Engraving is also known as rastering, so it's going to go back and forth and actually engrave the material. Vectoring or cutting is going to be the same thing, except it follows a singular line. Excuse me, follows a singular line that we use for quick cutting procedures. So I would hit that, I would hit print, and I would send it over, and then we're done. Excuse me. Thank you for coming to my Tech Talk. Don't forget to like and subscribe.